Welcome to Pond Lehocky, the largest workers' compensation law firm in Pennsylvania. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured and disabled workers obtain benefits, as well as some of the biggest settlements in the state. Even better, Pond Lehocky doesn't charge a dime until you win. If you've been injured at work, give Pond Lehocky a call.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
And the big story on Action News.
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
It's another edition of the Labor and Energy Show with JDoc and Krausey. Good to be here, and glad that we made it to the month of November 2023, JDoc, where the final 2 months of the year are significant in a lot of ways. Our entire show today is going to focus and zero in on a big announcement that came down in the month of October. I'll let you lead the audience into what our conversation will be, but it's something that we talked about going back into the early part of the year, February, March, April, and it was great to hear the news in October when it was officially announced.
Absolutely, Joe. Certainly, we're talking about the hydrogen hub and the grant. A $750 million federal funding will come, obviously, to the Mid-Atlantic to kick off the new clean energy economy and the hydrogen hub. I want to say, like you mentioned, we've had several shows highlighting how various entities in the greater Philadelphia region have banded together to apply for a Department of Energy Hydrogen Hub grant. Okay, and it's such a big deal. A lot of hard work was put into it, and so the program, literally has held promise to be transformational for the regions that get the projects and that get the grants. Okay, very competitive process, but after, like I said, a ton of hard work by our nonprofit committee, the Mach 2 committee, they created an amazing presentation. And on the 13th of October, we got the call that, our region was awarded a $750 million federal funding grant, for the hydrogen hub. And so it means jobs. Okay. It means clean energy, and it means energy security, and so much more. And we're going to have on this broadcast Jim Snell, business manager, Steamfitters Local 420, who was on that committee, spearheading that committee. Collin O'Mara, CEO of the National Wildlife Federation. Okay, we're going to talk about, for the next hour, about the hydrogen hub, the great benefits it brings to our region and several other regions around the country, as well as to our environment, and again, to our energy security and to our general public. So to say we're excited and appreciative, the board of directors that put everything together would be an understatement. And, we're just ecstatic that, our region was chosen.
If you're tuning in to this edition of the Labor and Energy Show, and you just listened perhaps to our opening banter before we get into bringing Jimmy Snell and Collin O'Mara into the conversation, you might say, wait a minute, what is a hydrogen hub and how does that affect me? Well, as we get into the show on the other side of the break, you'll learn a little bit more about that. I've always said, JDoc, and one of the elements or one of the areas of this program, the Labor and Energy Show, has been the ability to kind of bring the conversation to the kitchen table of those listening, so they can be better educated about what's happening, and they could be more responsible with some of the decisions or some of the thought process that they have. So I'm excited to do that. I think it's going to be a great 1 hour show. 30 seconds till we get to the break, but I wanted to reference that because there may be somebody out there listening. Hey, wait a minute, what does that mean?
Well, we're going to learn all about what it means in a minute, but our Energy Education and Awareness Initiative with Advocacy United is about educating the public on the realities, the details of common sense and energy. We care about our environment. Obviously, we care about jobs, and of course, we care about our traditional energy industry and renewables coming into the market. Our goal, as you know, Joe, is always to bring everybody together, to work together on creating a win-win situation for all. And the project we're going to talk about right now is a great example of that.
Across the JDoc Media Network, on terrestrial radio, on digital, and in some ways from our coast to coast. We'll get to our first commercial break. This is the Labor and Energy Show with JDoc and Krausey. Back in a moment.
My name is Eleanor Northaft. My husband was in the union, Local 282. As I'm getting older, I would like somebody to fight for me. So I called up Retiree First.
Hi.
And I got Brooke.
So nice to meet you. I'm Brooke. I'm an advocate at Retiree First. I've been working with Eleanor for 3 years. She was one of my first calls. I helped her with transportation to her doctors, getting her glasses reimbursed.
Oh, they are pretty fancy.
I'm basically just answering any questions she has.
And I always have a lot of questions.
Not too many.
I have a friend there. I love it because I can depend on her to help me out in any situation.
Oh, I'm excited.
She always comes through for me.
Do you stream on a Roku, a Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app. Watch Action News live,
And the big story on Action News.
plus special programming, breaking news, and severe weather updates.
Tremendous amounts of rain.
Always on, always the news team you trust. Watch 6ABC 24/7 on your streaming device. Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
Back here on the Labor and Energy Show with JDoc and Krausey. Don't forget one other reminder for our audience today. You can go to Apple or Spotify. Just search Labor and Energy, the Labor and Energy Show, and you can download this edition of the Labor and Energy Show. And all of our past editions, JDoc, are found and easily consumed by the public when they're ready to consume. Over to you, sir.
Absolutely. Thank you, Joe. And like we said, this program is going to be all about our hydrogen hub. I'm ecstatic to bring into the program Jim Snell and Collin O'Mara. First, Jim, if you will, remind our listeners a little bit about who you are and who you represent.
Sure thing, JDoc. Once again, good morning, and thanks for giving us this platform. You know, I say this all the time whenever I'm lucky enough to be on your show here, and there's nothing like it in the country. And you guys do a great job, and we're very fortunate to be able to talk about many things in the labor community on your show, Labor and Energy Show.
Thank
so
you,
thanks for that, and thanks for the invite. My name's Jim Snell, business manager, Steamfitters Local Union 420. We have close to 5,000 members in our local. We are based out of Philadelphia, okay, more specifically Northeast Philly, but within our jurisdiction are the collar counties, you know, Delco, Chester County, Montco, Bucks, and we cover as far north as Lehigh Valley area, Berks County, and even delve into the Pocono region a little bit. But you know, we delve into piping systems. If whether it's a school, you know, a hospital, a refinery, a nuclear facility, whatever the case is, if there's pipe work that's in those facilities, we're the ones installing it. We're the ones servicing that pipe work. So, but you know, with this show that we're talking about today, the Hydrogen Hub, you know, there is an awful lot of pipe work that is scheduled for the foreseeable future, you know, related to this hydrogen hub. And it gets myself, the Philadelphia building trades, South Jersey building trades, the Delaware building trades. It gets us all excited. It really does. It means opportunities for families, you know, being able our members being able to put food on the kitchen tables to feed their families. It enables our apprenticeships to really grow, right? So if we know we have a workload coming, we need to, bring in more people into the fold, right? To be able to have the manpower, the skilled manpower for these projects coming up in the future in the next, 5, 10, 15 years. So, and when we talk apprenticeships, it's about reaching out in the communities, which we'll get into, and maybe less fortunate communities, and bringing them into our fold, bringing them into under our umbrella, and giving them a chance to earn a good middle class way of life.
Well, appreciate that, Jimmy, and certainly I want to bring in Collin O'Mara, CEO, National Wildlife Federation. Collin, like Jimmy, you need no introduction in many circles, but for a number of our listeners, introduce yourself and talk a little bit about, the National Wildlife Federation.
Yeah, no, thanks, JDoc and Krausey. Thanks for having us on. And also just kind of thanks for believing in this thing from the beginning. There were a lot of naysayers along the way when Snell and I and others were having these conversations. It's kind of this crazy idea that, it's an impossibility until it becomes real. Right. And so,
right.
So my name is Collin O'Mara, as you mentioned. My day job is I'm head of the National Wildlife Federation. It's one of America's largest kind of conservation organizations. We got about 7 million folks that are part of the organization. A lot of folks that hunt and fish, a lot of folks that, like watching birds or, going out to outdoor spaces. Got a good mix of, Republicans and Democrats, in all 50 states and kind of across the country. So trying to bring people together to kind of do big things and still believe we can do big things in this country, despite some of the political division. So, trying to be a place that folks can come together. Before that, I ran the Natural Resource Agency for Delaware for 5.5 years. Where, we've helped oversee things like restarting the Delaware City refinery after that shut down, trying to bring a lot of jobs to bear after the recession of 2009, a lot of which were in the energy space. And this was everything from, some plants that were built to some renewable projects, and kind of trying to, put folks to work and have, billions of dollars of investment as we were trying to fill the hole that was created by some of the auto plants closing and some of the other facilities that shut down in Delaware during that time. So, I come at this from an economic and environmental point of view. And so when the president signed the infrastructure bill in November of 2021, Jim Snell, Brian McGlinchey, a handful of us, Richie Laser, got on the phone pretty much immediately. Ryan Boyer, a bunch of other folks started talking about, was there a way to put this together? And so, here we are, almost 2 years later, and
a little over 2 years. Yeah. And
we went from being a long shot, kind of that almost like bubble team. We're trying to get into the tourney to end up as a number 1 seed. So, it turned out, pretty well.
And it's interesting because I remember the first show, Joe Kraus, I don't know if, where Brian McGlinchey and Collin O'Mara were on the program, and Jim Snell called in, and we talked right at the end. And it was the first conversation we'd ever had on the air about, what was going on. And it was just the beginning of the process 2 years ago. And look at where we're at right now. And so, let's delve into that conversation for our listeners. Okay. Before we break it down, completely as we go through the conversation, what is a hydrogen hub? What are its benefits to the region regarding our energy generation? Jimmy Snell, you mentioned jobs. Obviously, it's a big deal. Our economy and the environment. Let me go to Collin, and then Jimmy, you weigh in.
Yeah, so at a high level, the goal of the hub, right, is to make sure that kind of clean, abundant hydrogen is available for a bunch of different uses. And so, the two that we're kind of focused on primarily are industrial uses. So these are things that, can't be electrified, but, maybe it's replacing, diesel, maybe it's replacing, some oil in some of these processes. And so, hydrogen's got incredible energy density to it. It's like a really powerful, and this is why it's already part of refining processes and different things. And then also on the transportation side. And so, a lot of opportunities in like SEPTA and Jersey Transit and DART, but also like all those new like warehousing facilities, all the like logistics facilities. Think about the ports, think about the airport, marine vessels. So a ton of opportunities for on the use side, and all those require a ton of jobs, right? To like manufacture everything. I think the thing that we saw pretty quickly, a lot of the other regions in the country were focused on kind of big plants, like a single plant producing a ton of hydrogen and trying to find folks to offtake it. what we figured out was that we can actually reuse some of the existing pipeline infrastructure, or at least the right-of-ways, to try to have different places producing hydrogen as a way to then feed into, kind of a pipeline system to allow a whole bunch of different uses. And you got the old, the interrefinery pipeline system. You got some of the old investments that Buckeye made. And some of those can be re-sleeved. Some of them are going to have to be replaced by Jim's guys. But there's a lot of work that would actually allow us to deliver, green hydrogen, and pink hydrogen. And I'll talk about that in a second, directly to these facilities, right? Directly to Monroe, right? Directly to the airport, directly to, what Hilco is trying to do. And so, all of a sudden now our proposal, which kind of seemed as a long shot, right? When this thing started, there were, 79 communities wanted a hub. They entered 33 were kind of asked for applications. They only interviewed 11 of us, and somehow we got through that. They awarded 7 of them. But the reason we stood out was kind of 3 things. One is ours was actually a system that actually, made sense in terms of this connectivity and using the great kind of industrial bones that we have here for this kind of new purpose. The second is we were the only ones who labor led. There was labor led, and we got PLAs on every single project. And Jim can talk about all the details there. But Jim's the co-chair, vice chair. I don't know what your official title is, but Jim's been in the leadership role from the beginning. Ryan was one of the folks in the interview when we went down to DC. Same thing with the guys in Delaware and the guys in Jersey. And then the third thing was on the environmental side, because we're proposing using renewables and nuclear from Salem. Ours was cleaner than a lot of the other ones, and we couldn't kind of replicate what they're doing in Appalachia. We just weren't going to be successful compared to some of those other regions. And so and there's also some health benefits related to that too, because as you're replacing diesel trucks with you're running them on hydrogen. All that pollution on 95, as you're going from, Claymont in Delaware to Chester up to the city, right? All of a sudden, a lot of those emissions, those particulate matter, is going to hopefully go away, because the only emissions that come from hydrogen after it's produced in a clean way is water vapor. So, this is a kind of a good outcome. But those 3 things kind of put us on the map that took us from a long shot to ending up being the best proposal in the country.
Collin, let me ask you, and Jimmy, hold your thought. Collin, let me just get one follow-up with you on this. Anytime I ever have a conversation with my brother-in-law, who's a very technical engineer, so he's well above me in many different ways. But when I try and break it down into simple conversation, his comeback to me is this: for every action that takes place, there is always a reaction. And sometimes the reaction is good, and sometimes the reaction creates a different set of circumstances or a different issue. Is this action create a positive reaction in terms of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the answer is yes. I think the way that we're proposing making hydrogen is taking water molecules, right, and splitting apart the H2 from the O, right? That's kind of the basics, chemistry of it, going back to high school. Because you can simultaneously help keep manufacturing facilities in production, as there's tighter EPA rules and rules from DEP and everything else, because they're cleaner. That reaction, right, all of a sudden making our industrial base more competitive, more cost competitive, it's a pretty good thing, right? All of a sudden, you don't see the big price because they're not using oil, right? Not having the big price fluctuation when there's when Russia's invading Ukraine or there's conflict in the Middle East. So there's an economic case that's really, really strong for why this makes sense. And then on the health side, the reaction is kind of the consequence is that a lot of these other processes that have been relatively dirty, right, and they've affected worker health and community health over the years. If hydrogen's the input instead of some of the other traditional fuels, all of a sudden now workers are going to be a little healthier, the community's going to be a little less pollution, maybe a lot less pollution. And so in this case, there's really no downside because of the way we've constructed this thing. We're going to get 20,000 jobs and cleaner skies at the same time. And that's a pretty good day.
Jimmy Snell, jump in there and talk about what Collin was talking about in regards to what we had going for us, and talk about the process.
Sure. Look, so here we are as a region, right? This region has been flush, speaking of building trade terms and jobs, right? At the end of the day, we've been flush with industrial work for decades upon decades. A long time ago, between the 3 regions, South Jersey, Delaware, and the Marcus Hook region in Philly, South Philly, we had 8 or 9 refineries going at one time, right? So, when it came to the building trades or construction in general, there was always work going on, right? People were busy making money, right? So, well, the world has changed over the last few years, right? And like to Collin's point, it's about transitioning. Bottom line, making the world a cleaner, better place. And there's no one that likes a clean world. No one more than my members. I think I'm one of the only guys who doesn't hunt or fish. Okay, so look, it's like Collin mentioned, the underground piping network. That was one of the things that a few of us, when we first started this thing, we thought about this. Well, with all the underground infrastructure already in place, that has to be a positive, like in regards to thinking up a hydrogen hub, so to speak. And are we is this real? Can we pull something like this off? And like Collin mentioned, myself, Brian McGlinchey, who you've had on the show, Collin and Richie Laser, and we banged heads for many months, and then pulled in a couple other smart guys, and look, and I'm going to say this: we're extremely fortunate to have Collin as the leader of this pack. And who would have thought 2 years ago, we were kind of banging our heads together, and here we are now. I mean, it's surreal, right? A lot of ups and downs through the process. There were many times I didn't know if this thing was going to get pulled off. And the more we opened our group up to other end users in the region, listen, end users that quite frankly need to clean up their act, so to speak, and they would be prime candidates to use hydrogen. The more end users that wanted to hop on board, the more end users that had questions and wanted to dip their toe into this thing first and find out a little more. As each day went on, we thought, man, this actually is a real thing. We can do this. And once again, having that underground piping infrastructure already in place was a significant part of this whole hub. I just, to remember the night that I was on the phone with Brian McGlinchey talking about the possibility, do we have what it takes, and be quite frank, Brian, he said, I know what I got to do tomorrow morning. And he picked up the phone and called Collin. And, and you just start thinking about things. And look, I had heard about hydrogen. I had read a lot about it, right? Very, very prominent in parts of Europe, prominent in Australia. Well, here it's coming. Boom, it's here. Well, why can't we be a part of it, right? That was my thinking, our thinking, right? And the thing that's great about those first 4 or 5, 6 people that were involved with this from the get-go over 2 years ago, no one's getting paid for this. These are people that love the region, love where they live, and they want to see this region thrive, right? But if the world is going to transition into a renewable world, well, damn it, we want to be at the forefront of it. Bottom line.
Jimmy, you had a significant role in that committee. And I know from day one, you were excited from the time literally you came on in the last 5 minutes of that broadcast to talk about this. Taking it full circle, you and Krausey and I were talking about, October 13th. Talk about getting the call and what that was like.
Well, so as time went on, right, like Collin mentioned, we had an interview, an all-day interview from like 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. with Department of Energy. Our group did, Mach 2, 20 people sitting right across from 20 other people from DOE. And there were no softball questions, I can tell you that. DOE is very serious about this, about environmental justice, workforce development, apprenticeship, that kind of thing. And, nothing easy about that interview. But after that interview process, you kind of walk back and say, you know what, we had a pretty damn good interview. And boy, this thing we dreamt up 2 years ago, I think we really got a shot. So as the next couple months went on, all right, our interview was in July of this past summer. As the next couple months went on, we actually kind of started feeling pretty darn good. And And when we got the call, so the president came to Tioga Marine Terminal in Philly to make the announcement on Friday, October 13th. A couple days before that, DOE had called us. It was a Tuesday, I believe, and they had called us. It was kind of around noontime. We got notified that they wanted to have an impromptu 4 p.m. conference call. Anyone that can get on the call, get on the call. And you're a little nervous, you know what I mean? Like, are we in or are we out? And I'm a guy that, until I see a shovel in the ground, that makes me happy. But and we were the first group that they notified, and they almost were as excited as us, because here we are, right? We're at the forefront of this is an energy revolution here, and it's just so cool to see it come full circle, and to see the president of the United States, at the microphone down Tioga Marine Terminal, talking about steamfitters, saying steamfitters and electricians and other trades going to benefit from this. And look, it's not just about the work, right? Like Collin mentioned, I mean, there are communities in our region that are, truly suffering from, environmental justice and, high asthma rates, children, things of that nature. So, it's this is a whole big thing here. It ain't just about the work, okay? But
it's interesting, Jimmy, and I'll go to Collin. Collin, talk about one of the things we talk about, and I love hearing Jimmy talk about. It's not just about the jobs. The jobs are obviously a big deal, but it's about working together. People from all walks, okay, the energy sector, labor, obviously the environment, to put together a project of this magnitude. Talk about your thoughts on that. Everybody working together for a common cause, and obviously, setting new boundaries.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question, JDoc. And I think, look, we're learning on the fly right now, right? I mean, for too many decades, right? The environmental community and the business community, the industry community, even labor in some cases, have been at odds over, what's good, right? And folks are trying to put food on the table, and folks want cleaner air, right? Like it shouldn't. And all of a sudden now with some of these technologies, you don't have to choose. Now, again, it requires a lot of work. It's going to require, kind of a change in the way we're thinking. But, in the environmental movement, folks have been conditioned for decades, right, about how to stop stuff. And now we're at a point where we have to build stuff because there's no way to get to where we need to get on the climate side, on the job side, on the environmental justice side, unless you're kind of changing these systems. And so, and there's still folks that are skeptical, right? And I appreciate that. I mean, I think we got to do a better job with outreach and education. But I think what we saw pretty quickly is that the advantage that I mentioned, like the infrastructure, labor, having it be renewable and nuclear, not heavy and fossil, because we weren't going to out Appalachia, right? We weren't going to outdo the Gulf, right? I mean, like we're not in that position right here in this part of the country. So, by sticking to those kind of core principles, all of a sudden, a whole bunch of partners that typically have been adversarial in the past, all of a sudden had common ground, and all of a sudden now you got a force that. And that's why I love this region. I mean, so many other hubs broke down just because of infighting, egos, like all kinds of nonsense, like petty politics, where like there was never any like major disagreements. I mean, I would have loved to have, our governor in New Jersey maybe a little more involved, but beyond that, he's working on one up in New York that wasn't successful. But the the camaraderie and these are folks that had a common goal, right? But just became friends in the process, right? Which, and I think that teamwork. I think it could set the model for a whole bunch of things in our region, right? We think about some of the biotech stuff, some of the transit stuff. I mean, some of the offshore wind potentially. I mean, there's like a model here that's, how do we move the region forward together as opposed to duking it out in the courts or in some regulatory process.
Absolutely.
Labor and Energy Show here with JDoc and Krausey, Jim Snell joining us, Collin O'Mara joining us. And I almost feel as we go to the break, JDoc, that we should be celebrating in big cheer. I think it's an amazing feat. The Hydrogen Hub Award became official, as Jim Snell said, in October. A lot of road work into getting it done. It is now done. We'll get to our first commercial break on the Labor and Energy Show. On the other side of the break, I'll turn over the controls. JDoc, Collin, and Jimmy will break it down, and then I'll see you back here in segment 4. This is the Labor and Energy Show with JDoc and Krausey. Back in
Welcome to Pond Lehocky, the largest workers' compensation law firm in Pennsylvania. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured and disabled workers obtain benefits, as well as some of the biggest settlements in the state. Even better, Pond Lehocky doesn't charge a dime until you win. If you've been injured at work, give Pond Lehocky a call.
The best way to describe Anthony, David, and Jane are that they're my brothers. I met Anthony at LA Fitness because I noticed that he had a Teamster's bag and his dad was a Teamster leader.
I'm a third-generation son of labor. My grandmother worked in a factory. My mother and father were both Teamster members. I don't think there's a trade that I don't have a family member in.
What's so big for me coming from a union background is what affects one member affects the entire membership.
A lot of people can relate to the issues that individuals deal with. We pride ourselves on empathy.
The big value that's always instilled in you if you grow up in a union household is the importance of brotherhood. People that lean on each other, that rely on each other.
When we were building this business, having that background and knowing what matters most to the union members is really what we use to drive and build out Retiree First.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
And the big story on Action News.
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
So welcome back, everyone, to the Labor and Energy Show with JDoc and Krausey. We're having a fantastic conversation. We're talking Hydrogen Hub. We have Jim Snell, business manager, Steamfitters Local 420, Collin O'Mara, CEO of the National Wildlife Federation. And I'll tell you, one of the things that really makes me proud, one of the things we say here, we've been saying it for years, the leadership of our labor community. Jim Snell is at the top of that. And I'm really proud, Collin, when I hear you talk about everybody, working together, okay, for a common goal. And this is such a big deal. We've talked about utilizing, obviously, all the resources and all of our leadership for a common goal, the environment, jobs, clean energy, our traditional energy community also being involved and putting heads together that maybe normally wouldn't be on the same side, maybe adversarial at times, but it's so beautiful to see this and to see the progress. Now, one of the things I like to get into, we're going to break it down a little bit. Colin, for clarity, hydrogen itself isn't new when it comes to industrial use. Refining already uses a lot of it to make good old gasoline and diesel, but we're talking about making it in both a zero emitting manner and using it more abundantly as an energy source in different applications. Is that correct, number one? And number two, if you'd elaborate.
Yeah. So, I mean, the running joke when I was in school, right, was that hydrogen was the fuel of the future, and it always would be. Right? I mean, like, the first hydrogen tests were actually run in the 1800s. There was a kind of internal combustion engine that ran on hydrogen in 1806. I mean, like, there was all kinds of stuff, years ago, and there's kind of this battle for which was going to get, kind of which fuel source is going to kind of get used in different types of vehicles and different types of processes. And because, oil and natural gas and other things were easier to transport, easier to control, hydrogen kind of fell behind. I think the difference that what we're talking about is that right now in the country, more than 90%, probably 98%, 99% of the hydrogen that's used in different industrial processes is coming from natural gas. So you're taking that CH4 molecule, right? And you're kind of splitting it apart through steam methane reformation kind of a process where you basically are kind of blowing it apart. It's a process that does have emissions, right? You got emissions when you're pulling it out of the ground, you're moving it, obviously when you're splitting the molecules, and then when you're combusting it. And so, and again, the law that we were kind of competing to get the award from required at least a few to be kind of fossil fuel based. And, we were kind of pretty confident that Texas, Louisiana, the Gulf, the Appalachian region with Senator Manchin's leadership in particular would likely fill those slots. And so that left us to kind of look at the more renewable side, the green side that we talk about. And so the difference here compared to steam reformation is that you're bringing renewable energy to power something called an electrolyzer, which is basically kind of a membrane system that's then, kind of separating the oxygen from the H2 molecule, from the H2O, right? And kind of separating that out. The difference there is that instead of having carbon kind of go in the atmosphere, you just have water vapor from the oxygen piece of it. So, it's going to require, kind of feedstocks on the input side from renewables and from nuclear, and especially on the Jersey side. And then, but at that point, the H2 molecule, has a whole bunch of different uses, right? So like you can move it, and you can different ways to distribute it too, right? You can move it through pipelines, you can move it through trucks, you can move it through different marine vessels. So it's a kind of a Swiss Army knife of kind of energy that you can kind of do with a lot of different things. I think, the thing that I get excited about is as we're trying to make, steel competitive again, as we're trying to make, cement cleaner, as we're trying to have chemical processes that are cleaner, as you're trying to have, lower emission fuels. Having kind of green hydrogen on the input side means you don't have all the other, kind of downstream or I guess kind of upstream, kind of emissions. And so, you're a lot cleaner from day one, but you also make those processes more economically competitive. And so, it gets technical really quickly, but, I think hopefully folks can kind of just think about, if you're using, kind of a greener energy and these electrolyzers, to split apart the hydrogen in the water, and using it for these kind of areas that are what they call kind of tough to decarbonize, kind of tough to kind of reduce emissions in specifically, the benefits are kind of astounding economically and ecologically.
Jimmy Snell, the technical side of this, obviously, like Collin said, it can get in the weeds fairly quickly. And in a sense, that's kind of where there's a breakdown. One of the things we try to do on the show is, translate, okay? Because even, traditional energy companies, there are different compartments. When you talk to a John Bain and he's like, I'm not the technical guy, but there's a process here. Then obviously, you got to be able to communicate that process on the committee. And obviously you guys have the responsibility of understanding and at least getting the, getting the knowledge to understand that technical part. And obviously, communicating back and forth. Talk about that process and how important it was.
Well, yeah, no, you hit the nail on the head, JDoc. Using communication skills, I should say, is the number one thing we need to do. Okay, and as a matter of fact, just this past week, along with Department of Energy and Collin, kind of moderated the event. It was all about being open and honest and talking to people, the community, about what this hydrogen hub is. Okay, so it's going to take multiple other, meetings, Zoom meetings and whatnot, whether it's our political friends, more end users, the community at large, just to explain what this thing is, right? There's the technical people, Collin being one of them. They know this thing like the back of their hand. But I think surely as time goes on, right, people are going to find out about this, okay, and they're going to know, this is how they're going to have to adapt to this, all right, to clean up a lot of these plants that we're talking about. Some of them are hard to decarbonize, but if some of these end users are all in, they'll as time goes on, they will be able to decarbonize these facilities. And I got to say something, like we talked about it last segment, about everyone being together on this, right? I've never seen anything like it before. All right. The only thing I could kind of came in a close second is when the region was trying to get Amazon, if you remember, to get on Amazon to come to Philadelphia. You had everybody tripping over themselves to be a part of that team, right? And it, it was unsuccessful. I liken this to that attempt to lure Amazon. I mean, we had, you had labor and we have our group here, but you have academia. You had Rowan College, you had Delaware State, you have Cheney University, Penn, Drexel. I mean, all these groups, and I'm sure I'm missing a few other schools, you had them fully on board, engaged with this quest to get a hydrogen hub. You had labor, of course, end users. On the political front, I mean, when has this ever happened where all levels of government were all on board, local, state, right? And naturally the feds. You had Mayor Kenny fully on board, helping any way he can. Josh Shapiro, I mean, he was just phenomenal from day one. Okay, and I'm just talking about Pennsylvania here, but was extremely helpful in any way possible. And naturally, the President of the United States. You had Carney in Delaware, and you had people over in South Jersey. Just everybody coming together, and look, all these people coming together, right? most of them didn't know what the hell hydrogen was, right? Or is, but they knew one thing. It was to make this region better. It was to, it was all about jobs and clean air. And that's that, cutting all through all the technical stuff. That's what it came down to. And people wanted to be a part of it.
I'll tell you what, and just the trust that we're building with one another. Obviously, if we can create this project at the magnitude that it is and bring it to fruition, and the relationships that we're creating, I think it's just so important. It's really what our energy education and awareness, initiative is all about. And it's so great that we're not segregating communities and everybody's coming together. Leadership is such a big part of that, and I'm obviously proud of what our top leaders, including Jimmy Snell. When you talk about bringing things together, let's talk a little bit about the next step. Okay, now that the Department of Energy has announced, obviously, the funding award, what's next? What are the next steps, and how long will it take to get the initial projects associated with the hydrogen hub off the ground? Collin, I'll go to you first, and then Jimmy, jump in.
Yeah, I mean, it's the feds, right? So nothing moves overnight. But so right now we're negotiating kind of, they're kind of kicking their tires on the organization, making sure we're kind of equipped to handle the amount of money that's going to be moving into the region. They are going to kind of pass it out in kind of 4 to 5 phases. And so the first phase is really around community engagement, workforce development, kind of planning, permitting, making sure that we're kind of ready for like the next kind of round of investment. So that's like 12 to 18 months. So you're kind of looking, end of this year through end of next year. But I think there's some projects that could, you could see some shovels on the ground next year, end of the year. But 2025 is when you're going to see, a lot of construction. And it's going to be phased, right? So like there's some projects are ready to go now. Other ones are, the technology is kind of evolving, and, some of the other pieces are kind of coming together. But, the nice thing is that every dollar we got of federal money, we're going to see at least like $3 to $4 of private investment to match it, right? So you're not looking at $750 million of investment. You're looking at, $4 billion worth of investment, across the region. And I think I want to make sure, and obviously Jim's been the leader in this with their, world-class training facility. How do we get kind of that workforce ready? Because, 13,000 construction jobs over a handful of years is a real number that well exceeds, what a lot of folks have in their labor halls right now. And so how do we, use this as the opportunity to scale up, recognizing that if we do it right, we're going to have other opportunities whether it's in hydrogen or offshore wind or, some of the other things that are coming down the pipeline. So there's just lots of work, but we got to kind of get the pieces right. And so you're going to see a lot of community engagement, a lot of town halls, like a lot of Zoom meetings, all that kind of stuff. I don't want anyone surprised. I want to be completely transparent about, so folks know what they're getting. There's questions, right? Folks don't know a lot about it, as Jim was just saying. So the communication is important, but that's what we're going to see for this first phase.
So having said that, and that segues right into what I wanted to talk about next, Jimmy, obviously beyond the man hours, okay, you had kind of touched on a little while ago, and it kind of leans towards what Collin's talking about. We may need to be, obviously you talk about our apprentice programs and our journeyman upgrade programs. Will we need to develop new types of training programs for the clean hydrogen economy? What do the trades have to do to fully take advantage of what's coming our way?
Sure, JDoc. So what do we need to do? Okay, we need to make our apprenticeships even larger, more all-inclusive. Okay, that's one thing that is absolutely a certainty, moving forward. Okay, from now, in years to come. There's a lot of work going on right now, right? Everybody says there's a skilled labor shortage. Well, it's good and bad, right? It's good. Everybody's working. The money's coming back to your union halls, into your pension funds, your health and welfare funds. But when it comes to large scale, big projects like these, okay, and the work, we need to have that manpower. All right. I got news for you. The country is flush with work for now, right now, and for the foreseeable future, with massive billion-dollar projects, EV car battery plants and computer chip plants, and you'll have more hydrogen hub stuff and and more energy related stuff as the years to come. So when you have these large scale projects, right, in my case, and everybody's working, I still need to man these projects, right? So I call in travelers. Well, everybody's working from around, throughout the country. I need my goal, and everyone's goal within these building trades within these 3 regions is to grow your union. You're gonna have to grow it, okay? You can't just sit back and wait for people to come to us, and come and take an application. We need to really develop a strategy going out into communities, those less fortunate communities, and pulling young men and women into the fold. Bottom line, that's the only way this thing's going to work. All right. And that's not just talk. That's the truth. We need the bodies. We need to educate these young men and women. All right. And that's how I see this, the building trades evolving because of this.
Collin, I see you shaking your head there. Jump in there. Elaborate if you would.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jim said it perfectly, right? I mean, obviously, the labor in the Philly region, like in Delaware and Jersey, has been strong for a long time. Obviously, that's not the case everywhere in the country, right? And I think if we can show like how you get kind of a 21st century workforce that's all organized, right? That and it's not just UA, right? It's Lyona, it's IBW, it's everybody, right? It's just everyone's benefiting. We kind of set a new standard, right? That you don't have to have these false choices that I think a lot of folks have forced on us for a long time, that you can't have like good wages and, kind of a functioning economy, right? It's a bullshit, excuse me. It's an inappropriate, kind of trade-off. And I think, I get excited because it's not just the leadership within the building trades. It's also, it's like Cheney University is doing some really cool stuff that's going to, Pamela Key's been doing some amazing thinking. They're going to be kind of a hub, big part of the hub, Delaware Tech, some of the vocational schools, some of the pre-apprenticeship programs. I mean, I think in the workforce investment boards, I want to make sure, every project's going to be PLA. You got, 26 PLAs are going to be part of this thing. We're going to obviously meet all the federal standards and go well beyond them. But if we could bring, thousands of young folks into the trades in a way that sets them up for a lifetime of success, that's a game changer, right? And they're doing stuff that's actually make their communities cleaner and safer and a little more vibrant. That's the ultimate win-win.
Go ahead, Jimmy.
No, and to Colin's point, just to piggyback, I didn't mean to interrupt you, JDoc, but project labor agreements. That is what the building trades strive for on every project. But we have trouble on many projects enacting a PLA. The fact that a project labor agreement is tied into this whole hydrogen hub, is a monumental thing. And listen, there were people that don't want recognition. They're behind the scenes, and I definitely want to throw a little shout out, a thank you to Sean McGarvey, National Building Trades. He was Philly guy, but he was involved behind the scenes as well. People like Ryan Boyer, head of Philadelphia Building Trades, right? Ryan just put me into this thing. He said, here, you're representing us, report back to me. And I would constantly report back to Ryan, and Ryan was fully engaged as well, as was, representatives from South Jersey Building Trades and Delaware Building Trades. To have a project labor agreement stamped on this whole hydrogen hub is a major deal for the workers of this region.
And having said that, believe it or not, guys, we got about a minute left. Just want to talk about safety for a minute, okay? It's always a concern, especially for opponents of projects like this. Even without talking about the details of the facts. Obviously, we've been using hydrogen safety in refining for a long time, and hydrogen fuel cell vehicles have also been around for a while. We're just talking about a lot more of them. Before we go and talk to us not only about how we have been using hydrogen safely to date, but are there other regulations and programs that need to be put into place to make sure the public is comfortable on the safety front? Jimmy?
Well, look, when it comes to safety, the building trades, no one does it better. Okay. We hammer away at safety each and every day from the day one when an apprentice starts in this local union or any other trade. And I can say that with confidence. Are there things that may have to be put in place to make this whole hub more safe? Maybe there is. And if there is, yeah, we want to make things safe. Look, my members, right? And I tell them all the time, you wake up in the morning with 10 fingers, 10 toes. We want you to come home with 10 fingers and 10 toes. Okay.
Hey, my father used to say, one hand for yourself, one hand for the company. And in this case, one hand for the community as well. Collin, I'll let you finish up on this topic.
Yeah. So on the safety side, I mean, I think a lot of our existing pipeline infrastructure isn't kind of hydrogen ready right now, right? So the things that are bigger diameter, you can re-sleeve. There's a ton of work in that. There's federal approvals around that. We'll make sure that that's all safe. There's a lot of things that are going to have to be replaced, right? Just because they're 20 years old, 30 years old, 50 years old, and so again, having kind of state of the art, pipeline infrastructure that is safe. Because one of the environmental issues is that leakage is obviously not good on a safety level, but it's also not good on an environmental level. But we can avoid that, but it also means more work, right? So I mean, it's one of these kind of self-fulfilling things where getting safety right means more jobs and also means more community confidence. So if we do it right, it's again we can become the model for the country. Where it's like if they can do it here, then let's take it everywhere.
Absolutely. Well, gentlemen, I want to thank you both, Jim Snell, Business Manager, Steamfitters Local 420, and Collin O'Mara, CEO of National Wildlife Federation, for joining us on the Labor and Energy Show with JDoc and Krausey. And also, for your commitment to this project. It's such a big deal for our region. And like you just said, Collin, making it a model, for the nation. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being on the program.
Thanks, JDoc.
Thanks, JDoc.
We'll have more from the Labor and Energy Show with JDoc and Krausey in just a minute.
My name is Eleanor Northaft. My husband was in the union, Local 282. And as I'm getting older, I'd like somebody to fight for me. So I called up Retiree First.
Hi.
And I got Brooke.
So nice to meet you.
I'm Brooke. I'm an advocate at Retiree First. I've been working with Eleanor for 3 years. She was one of my first calls. I helped her with transportation to her doctors, getting her glasses reimbursed.
Oh, they are pretty fancy.
I'm basically just answering any questions she has.
And I always have a lot of questions.
Not too many.
I have a friend there. I love it because I can depend on her to help me out in any situation.
Oh, I'm excited.
She always comes through for me.
Do you stream on a Roku, a Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app. Watch Action News live.
And the big story on Action News.
Plus special programming, breaking news, and severe weather updates.
Tremendous amounts of rain.
Always on, always the news team you trust. Watch 6ABC 24/7 on your streaming device. Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
And welcome back, everyone, to the Labor and Energy Show with JDoc and Krausey. Good dialogue, good conversation, all part of what was a great success and great work done by Jim Snell leading the way, and Collin O'Mara explaining and talking today, JDoc, about the hydrogen hub. And we went long, of course, so we only have about a minute before we have to say goodbye here on the Labor and Energy Show.
Well, I could tell you this, Joe. It was great to have Collin and Jim on the program. Their leadership and the leadership of the committee is what our initiative is all about. Okay, and that is working together for our, obviously our environment, for our workforce, for our energy security. Okay, and great leadership does that, and that's what Jim and Collin represent, and the Mach 2 committee. This is going to bring such an amazing impact to our community, and as Collin O'Mara talked about, to be a model across the country. I think this is going to be a catalyst for our transition. You talk about the energy transition. Working with labor, our traditional energy resources, and our renewable industry. Just proud to be a part of it.
Yeah, great stuff today. And again, shout out to everybody that was part of that process, that long process that now will come to fruition. And our listeners, the end result, our listeners and our communities will enjoy a great benefit from all of the fantastic work, which is always the case. That's going to do it for this edition of the Labor and Energy Show with JDoc and Krausey. On behalf of our very, very special guests today, Collin O'Mara and Jim Snell, and of course on behalf of JDoc, I'm Joe Kraus. See you next time, everybody.
Welcome to Pond Lehocky, the largest workers' compensation law firm in Pennsylvania. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured and disabled workers obtain benefits, as well as some of the biggest settlements in the state. Even better, Pond Lehocky doesn't charge a dime until you win. If you've been injured at work, give Pond Lehocky a call.